Hi, I'm Delisi.
And I'm Chef James Rigato.
And in this episode of Essential Cooking, we talk with Zach Typinski from Urbanrest Brewing about the rigors of becoming a certified cicerone, the history of Oktoberfest, making beer and kombucha, and being a victim of his own success.
You guys are just killing it. I can't even get beer anymore.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. We're battling our way back. You know, we've had a long road since March, but we're getting our capacity back up and starting to fill the tanks more and more. We got a couple new ones that actually just went online this week, so
that's exciting.
A new little expansion.
Yeah, I think, people got to realize, the beers you make are not just like, pump it out, few days, ferment, and go to tank. I mean, you got conditioning.
Everybody's always asking, does it come out beer on the other end? I mean, most of our lagers are 10-week beers from start to finish.
Yeah,
so It's an incredible amount of time and patience, and I think that's what I really like about brewing. It forces you to have some humility and just let that beer do its thing. Let it sit in the cold freezer and mellow out.
Michigan beer has been a wild 10, 15-year run. I mean, you're talking about, like, we kind of got famous, I feel like, for a minute for, like, huge percentage stouts and bourbon barrel. I mean, Michigan, we obviously have, you got a lot of your big, Dragon's Milk and your, KBS. A lot of our beers for a long time were, like, juggernauts. Jolly Pumpkin with their incredible sour program. I feel like Michigan beer was famous for just being, like, rock and roll, like, loud in your face. And those are all great beers, but what is so special about Urbanrest to me is, like, you're making, like, Pilsner. You're making like clean, tight, almost like grandpa beer in theory, but there's a reason why, like, grandpas are like wise and like, grandpas are like effective and like, they make things that last. And I think that's what I love about your breweries. Cause like when I started drinking Urbanrest, I was like, oh my God. It was like listening to it was like finding like a band your dad listened to that you didn't know about. It's like discovering, like the Rolling Stones or something. It's so classic. Talk to me about your philosophy about brewing.
So, I mean, really, that's exactly it. We talk a lot in the brewery about slow and low. We want to kind of change the ideology that small brewers can't brew lager. It was a massive industrialized thing with Budweiser and the consolidation of the large brewing companies, but the little guys can make lager too. And I want to bring that back. And I've always really appreciated that lager, that crisp style that you had when you were with your grandpa or your dad or whatever it is. And the little guys can make lager too. We don't have the production efficiencies quite the same, and so tank time is really limited. In a brewery like ours, it takes 4 times as long to make a lager as it typically does an ale. And so to dedicate that time and space to that lager, you have to have a passion for it and a love, because it's not at all about making money. If we were doing that, we'd just be cranking beers, left and right. But I want to have that nice passion that you can taste and maturity that you can taste over a great deal of time.
So, Zach, how far in advance do you plan when you're going to start a new beer? Or how does it must be this incredible schedule, and the timing must be so delicate, like when we're going to finish something, when we're going to start something. How does all that work?
It is very delicate, and my production assistant, it's painful for him because we let the beer do its thing, and sometimes you want to think it's going to finish in 28 days, and it might take 40. When that beer is done, that beer is in charge.
Wow.
It is, and so we're not stuck to a production schedule that beer's got to come out that day. If it's not ready and it's not tasting the way that we want it to taste, it just sits and waits, and that sometimes is frustrating. We've been down to 2 and 1 beers in the past, and we've had to actually close the brewery with beer in the back that was almost ready but not quite there. And that's what it's all about for me. That's a representation of who I am, what the company wants to put out there, and so there's no point in releasing it a week early. When it's ready, and that beer is in charge in our facility, and it can be frustrating for everyone, including myself, but that's it. That's the law of the land. Mm-hmm. The idea of the brewery, the mission of the brewery, and being able to communicate that directly to our customers, through our staff, through our beers, the way we pour our beers, we're able to tell a story, and that's what it's all about.
Now, but you also pivoted, though, because for a while there, you were bringing it to people's doors.
Yes, and we still are actually.
You're still delivering?
Yeah, we're still doing delivery. We still do curbside pickup, and so we pivoted in March right away. Actually, I have a newborn son that was born in mid-April,
I remember that.
Just a month before, we had to completely pivot the business. My wife and I, 9 months pregnant, we canned everything down that we could, and And we started doing delivery, curbside pickup. We even did a little bit of local distribution at that time, but since we've opened back up, we haven't been able to keep up with that.
So you can still go online and order your beer delivered
Correct.
to your door.
Yeah, urbanrest.com/to-go is the place for that.
That to me is a silver lining of 2020, my friends.
Beer at your door.
You can have Zach, or somebody in your company bring me Urbanrest beer to my house.
Ironically, you could do that before even COVID hit, and no one was doing it. You know, and we've had so many people come out and be like, "Oh my gosh, are you going to keep this up?" And like, it's great, and it's a direct-to-consumer relationship, and that's what we really want, especially for the small guy to be able to survive. We have to serve direct-to-consumer. I'm not going to be able to compete on the shelf with Bell's or Founders or Budweiser or any of those guys. We need the extra margin associated with going direct-to-consumer. So any opportunity to do that, we'll take it.
That's great.
So, Zach, I was reading about beer this morning. I'm no expert, that's for sure. Beer apparently is the oldest recorded recipe in the world, like 5,000 BC. I think that's a pretty incredible thing to see that this has got this amazing history. Like, this has gone back so far.
That's part of the reason that I really love beer. I mean, the foundations of civilization and the planting of wild grasses and barley and things that people made beer from, these are directly associated with. So the historical aspect of brewing to me and the ties with civilization are just incredibly, incredibly interesting. Now the mead guys, which is honey wine, will kind of go back and forth with the beer guys about the oldest fermented beverage, but we'll take it today.
Yeah, absolutely. So is the word cicerone? Cicerone.
Correct.
So can you talk a little bit about that? Because you have gone through some pretty extensive, I guess, certifications or whatever when it comes to making beer. So I want you to talk about what that's like and how you get certified at the level that you're at. It sounds pretty intense to me.
So I'll give you a little short history behind it. 11 years ago, I started at a local beer distributor right out of college, and that beer distributor was very focused on education. The Cicerone certification program was kind of in its infancy at that time. A Cicerone is a Latin word for steward. And so the Cicerone certification program mirrors the sommelier certification program that we have for wine, in that there are multiple levels of certification and the knowledge associated with that in order to pass those. And so I have become now one of two people who have passed the advanced certification in the state of Michigan. Shout out to Annette May, who's the other counterpart there, who's been very inspirational to me personally and professionally. But yeah, there's that one level above advanced, which is master, and they take you through everything from keeping to serving, historical aspects, distribution aspects, production, ingredients. I mean, really everything from A to Z.
How many masters are there in America?
I believe there's about 14 in the world right now, and advanced we're talking right around 100 in the world. So,
and you're going for master?
Oh yeah, why not?
Yeah.
So what is that like? Talk about going in to take this certification and what that experience is like.
Well, a lot of folks, they joke and they say, "Oh, you went in, you tasted a bunch of beer." It's basically 250 short answer fill in the blank questions over a number of days. So it's 2 different days that the test is, and then they take you through a sensory panel as well, 3 different sensory panels, and then about 12 essays. And so, I mean, I literally wrote 12 essays. It's a timed exam. They keep you in a room. They take your phone. They seal it all up. Everything like that. You can't leave the premises. It's a very, very serious certification. And so it required years of rigorous training. My wife pouring me examples of spiked beers that had off flavors in them, identifying different styles based on, appearance, aroma, flavor, all that stuff. And so it's really identifying all the ins and outs associated with it.
Do you know, like, when you leave, if you passed? Do they call you later?
No, months later.
Months later?
Yeah, they're all hand done, checked by all the master cicerones, and there are only, I think, 3 that are employed by the actual certification program themselves. So they all check them by hand, and so it's a number of months. The decompression associated with that and the days following and wondering if you pass and how you could have, done better in certain sections is pretty intense.
Black perspectives haven't always been centered in the telling of America's story. Now, we're taking center stage. Introducing NPR's Black Stories, Black Truths, a collection of Black-led stories from NPR's podcasts. Search NPR Black Stories, Black Truths wherever you get your podcasts.
So it's October, right? So you're seeing a lot of Oktoberfest. I feel like there's kind of like a misunderstanding with Oktoberfest because isn't it typically a September event?
Yeah, so they started pushing it back in the mid 1800s to early September because the weather was so bad.
Right.
And so originally the festival had started in 1810 with the marriage of Princess Therese and Princess Ludwig, and so it was a big deal in that area at the time because Napoleon had really ripped through that Bavarian region, and so he had also denied that Prince Ludwig married a Russian princess, and so he had approved the marriage of the Princess Therese, and so it was a big celebration that they had after the fact to celebrate Germanic culture. They did horse races and all kinds of dances and costume contests, and of course beer.
So is that why Oktoberfest, the beer itself, kind of has like a style to it, like a malty kind of like that? Is that beer from that? Was that a specific beer brewed for these celebrations?
Correct. Yeah. Yep. And so it's a little bit stronger than your normal everyday beer, and kind of in the spirit of the festivities, they would make a little stronger of a beer. And so it's still only limited to 6 breweries inside a very specific demographic. And so all the beer that's served at Oktoberfest in Germany is the same 6 breweries it's been for hundreds of years.
That's pretty cool.
Have you ever gone over there?
I have not.
My God.
It is not.
Come on.
All the international trips, and it just has not aligned for me yet. It's definitely on my bucket list. I mean, it's if not the largest, one of the largest festivals in the world. It is the largest beer festival. 2 million gallons are consumed within a 2-week span, and so we're talking upwards of 20 million servings of beer.
Wow.
It's an astronomical amount.
All right, so we're gonna go next as soon as
do
we
it.
can go,
Let's do
Zach.
it.
I'm gonna go with you.
So let's talk about one of the things I love to drink, which is kombucha. And you guys have
Oh my
gone.
God,
You guys
the
have gone
best.
into that world as well. So talk about the similarities between brewing beer and making kombucha, and how different those two operations are.
Beer is typically all Saccharomyces, which is basically brewer's yeast. Bakers use it as well all the time. A lot of different industries use it, but where kombucha and beer separate is that kombucha is a mixed culture, and so there is not only a little bit of yeast in there, but also bacteria and microorganisms, and so they actually need oxygen in order to replicate, and so does beer. But at a certain point, oxygen can become a deterrent for beer, whereas for kombucha, it's needed for that culture to survive. And so they're also different in that the types of sugars that they ferment. Kombucha is typically a sweet tea made with a simple sugar like a sucrose or a dextrose, whereas beer is made from the sugar of malted barley, which is typically main component of maltose.
So why did you start making kombucha?
So started making kombucha actually because my wife and we were doing so much sensory. I had some gut issues. I had the mixed culture that I had going on in my stomach. I just needed to balance things out a bit. And so naturally we're fermenting a ton of different things in the house. And my wife's like, I'm going to check out this kombucha. My wife is my business partner as well as the head brewer. And she makes all the kombucha there. And so she put together our first batches. And since then we've had the same culture going. And so we pitched that same culture now for 11 years since we fermented our first batches of kombucha. And beer yeast does not survive that long. After a number of generations, it starts to mutate and act a different way. But yeah, we just started doing it at home, and it normalized me. And then when we opened the brewery, we said, let's stick 5 gallons on and let's see if people respond to it. And to this day, we have tons of people that have never even had our beer. They come specifically and only for our kombucha.
It is so good. I mean, I'm a kombucha
good.
snob. I've driven all over the country. I've hit up kombucha bars on the West Coast. It is the best kombucha. I mean, I sound like I said, I'm a super fan right now, but the kombucha is, Mary's a genius. Her kombucha is unrivaled. I mean, I would you sell my house to invest in Mary going national. Because So if you haven't been to Urbanrest to have their kombucha, or if you don't drink alcohol, it's a very low. That's an important part too about kombucha. It's very low grade alcohol.
Yeah, 0.5% typically, or right around there. You can also make hard kombucha, which has become really popular now. But we really stick to all organic, raw, probiotic, rich, and dense versions of kombucha.
So beer kind of has its own idea as to when it's going to be done. Is kombucha, is it a 3-week thing, or is that the same thing where it's not quite ready yet, it kind of decides, or does it have kind of a time where it's like, yeah, this is about the same amount of time that it always takes to get it ready?
It's pretty typical. As long as you keep the fermentation and the amount of oxygen you're exposing it to, you can get it really, really spot on. And so it's about a 3-week turn, typically, maybe a week or two if we're conditioning it on some different ingredients or something experimental or something like that. But typically it's around a 3 to 4 week, again, because you want those microbes and that bacteria to still be teeming and thriving, because that's the good stuff you want.
It's a science.
To me, the perfect merger between science and art, and that's why I really love it. I'm very process focused, but I'm also very artistic, and I want to express myself through my beer, just as James does through his food. What's on that plate, what's in that pint glass is a representation of our mission as people who are passionate about food and beer, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
so it's a nice merger between those two things, I think. And you can be as elementary as you want about it, or you can be as intense and crazy about it as you want it to.
Yeah. We're talking with Zach Typinski from Urbanrest Brewing Company in Ferndale. We've got a couple fun questions for you as we're about to wrap it up. We've got about 2 minutes here. So what food is always in your refrigerator?
I've got sourdough pizza, so I make sourdough pizza crust. I've always got a sourdough pizza crust, and so you can do so many different things with that actual crust, whether or not it's actually even pizza or whatever it ends up as. But I've always got a crust in there, especially being a new father too.
Yeah.
I every week I'll just replenish it, and that's something that's my backup.
It's a good one.
Okay. If you had to eat at a fast food restaurant, which one would it be?
Oh, sheesh.
Let's say there's no option.
Yeah, you got to.
You're at Restaurant Row, or a fast food row, I should say,
Middle
and
of
that's all
nowhere
there is
in
there.
Missouri, you got to eat.
I got to go with Popeyes. That chicken sandwich has just been killer lately.
Have
so
you
I'm
eaten
gonna
that
go with
chicken
I
Popeyes.
haven't,
Yeah.
but Popeyes. I like Popeyes beforehand. So
Yeah.
I'm sure it's great. I want
I'm
to.
waiting for James's rendition of the Popeyes chicken
Yeah,
sandwich.
well, yeah.
I tell you what.
I mean, honestly, we should go to Cousins and just eat theirs. But hey, so adding on to the fast food question, what's your go-to fast food beer?
For me, it was always Stroh's.
Stroh's?
First beer I had, my papa, I'm Polish, and so in his basement, he had all these relics of beer. He was really into beer. He brewed his own beer, made his own wine, and things like that at home as well. Brandy too, but it's all about Stroh's. Good old Detroit hometown guy.
You can find out more about Urbanrest Brewing at urbanrest.com. Our thanks to Zach Typinski, to you for listening.
We would like to thank La Marca Prosecco for their support. From the hills of Veneto, Italy, you can never go wrong with Prosecco, whether it's in a spritz or drinking straight.
Joan Isabella is our executive producer. Associate producers are Lisa Brancato and David Lyons. Production provided by Studios on the Pond in Rowan Nemisto. Original music by the Mallet Brothers. This is a production of Detroit Public Radio Station, WDET.
Subscribe on your favorite podcast app and join us as we explore the world of food and how to cook it right here on Essential Cooking.